Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I am Kayla Megwa.
And I'm Ayo Makine. Don't forget that today is the 4th day in the month of February 2025. And I know that some people are counting down to 14th already. So I'm just saying, you know.
We are not moved by these bullies. We are not moved. It's a beautiful month. But before we get to that beautiful month and all the important things that happen in February, let's take you all the way to Cross River State, a very beautiful part of this country, with everything that you need to have, as many romantic getaways as you want to. I hear that they're trying to revive a lot of the places in this state where you can have a wonderful time. We're looking at the city center today, Cross River, right there, the south geopolitical zone of Nigeria, named after the river, Cross River, formed from the eastern part of the eastern region on the 27th of May in 1967. Calabar is the capital of this place. Listen, the lush greenness of it all, the beautifulness, if there's such a word, of it all. Calabar has the potential, Cross River has the potential to serve itself and the entire south region with just tourism. I've been to this place many times. I had the pleasure, the absolute pleasure of going to Obudu and actually driving up the Devil's Elbow, you know, and then climbing down to the waterfall, you know, and experiencing life inside of the clouds. Calabar, Cross River is a magical place. Have you ever been? And what are your thoughts on this magical city, Ayo?
Well, the first thing that caught my attention is when you say you went to Devil's Elbow. Please explain.
Yes. So there's a mountain. So Obudu is on top of a mountain. And you have to climb this crazy mountain to get to where Obudu actually is. There's a town there, there are people, there's a village there, they grow bananas and whatnot, but the ranch in itself and the resorts at the top of that mountain. Now, that mountain is called Devil's Elbow because of how steep it is and very, very scary. I prayed. I was holding my rosary. I had my rosary in my hand. And I was praying to the Mother Mary. Hey, if this was wrong, forgive me. I won't do it again. You know? But I found that place is called Devil's Elbow. And many people actually climb up and down Devil's Elbow on bike. Just for the exhilaration and that breeze and that danger. But my goodness, I can bet you. So if you saw it, you would say, no, I am not climbing this. I will not do this to myself. Sometimes the car will be vertical, absolutely vertical, and I'm like, are we going to fall off this mountain today? Is this the day that it finally happened, you know? So it's such a wonderful thing. I just wish that more was done, especially for a place like Obudu. I wish, and this is a call really to the government in Cross River. Anything that can be done. It was really sad because the former governor, sorry about that, Ayo, the former governor was from Obudu. And the people of Obudu, if you got to talk to, you know how we are now. When we go to a place, we can't just sit and enjoy the sights. We have to go into the community and talk to the people. And when you talk to the people, they were very sad that Obudu was abandoned. And that's the truth. It was abandoned. Wasting. You know, it was wasting. No more staff. The place wasn't working very well. No more. The security that we saw was at the bottom of the hill. So if there's anything that the Cross River government can do to revive Obudu and revive tourism in this part of the country, will be fantastic, Ayo.
I think that's actually the number one, you know, Obudu Mountain Resort, it's also called, is right there. Remember in the days of one of the governors that you talked about, I think it was Donald Duke, they created Obudu Cattle Ranch, right? And then there was also the Tinapa, you know, it was also Tinapa, which is a place that combines business with pleasure, shopping malls, water park, film studio, entertainment facilities. You can literally just go there with your script and come up with a movie. you know,
Yes.
that's the design
Absolutely.
of that place. But let's enjoy, Kayla, just enjoy the sight of Cross River State today. Different parts of the city, of the state that we have shown you already. The fact that it is lush green, the fact that we are not, it's just peaceful, the fact that the infrastructure is up to date, at least road infrastructure as we can see so far. That's not to say that there aren't other areas of the place that need attention, or other areas of any part of the country, no matter how developed, that doesn't need any improvement. After all, we say that the largest room in the world is the room for improvement. So for those of you who are, well, what do you call you now, holiday makers in the course of the year, take time away from work, shut down your work phone if you have one, and just go somewhere to live. There's the Obudumantu Resort, there's Tinapa, it's a leisure resort as well. There's also the Cross Rivers National Park, and there are quite a number of other places. You know, there's the Calabar Marina Resort, there's, of course, from time to time you hear about Africa's biggest street party, the Calabar Carnival, and there's so many other things.
Yes.
Mary Slessor's house
There's
is
the
also in that place.
Ecom monoliths.
Yes, the monoliths.
There are the Ecom monoliths as well.
Yes.
Fantastic stuff. You know, so from the raw soaring plateaus of the mountaintops of Obanliku in the rainforest of Afi, from the waterfalls of Abokim and Kwa to the spiraling Oxbow Calabar River, so many things that need to be done and should be done, and I think will be done. I think Cross River has that governor, doesn't he? The governor who's interested in making the place beautiful and a home for all, you know. So it's something that we're hoping happens really soon, Mr. Governor. Please and thank you.
So that is Cross River State this morning, and it's still February. For those of you who don't go on leave until later in the year, including the fellow speaking into my ears right now, take some time off work, go to Cross River State, go anywhere, and just live, right? Just live. Life is for living, not just for working. All right, that said, so Kayla, we have quite a load on our docket this morning, but anything happening today?
Well, at least the only thing that we know that is actually happening today in the FCT is that, you know, that FEC meeting of yesterday, there's another one today. So we're looking forward to the outcomes of the FEC meeting, because, you know, these meetings are very important, very crucial. The president's cabinet, remember how long we wanted this cabinet to be formed, and then all the conversation about the people who make up this cabinet. Are they delivering on their mandates? What are they looking at? We saw some of the things that came out from the meeting yesterday, but a lot more, right? So when the entire FEC meeting ends, because this is day 2, I guess, of this meeting. When it ends, we'll be able to get exactly what the outcomes of those meetings, and hopefully get someone from the presidency to break down a lot of the things that were discussed and the outcomes of those meetings. So that's the major thing that we have happening today. But we will go on a short break, because when we come back, we'll be talking a little bit about the NLC rally. You know, not so long ago, we had a guest here in the studio who was talking about the rally of rallies. Well, that rally apparently has been suspended. Why? And what's going to be happening about this hike in the cost of tariff, the tariff for telecommunications? What's going to be happening there? So stay with us. I will be leading us on that conversation. Stay here.
whole of Africa, and there is no consultation of stakeholders that does not include us that will stand. It was on that premise that they now agreed to have a larger committee to look at the entire tariff structure and model and to come up with a realistic and an all-inclusive agreement. So the committee will be made up of 5 from both sides, and they're expected to come up with a result after 2 weeks. That will determine the next line of action and the process of engagement. The symbolic action of submitting the letters tomorrow will be put on hold until the outcome of such committee. The outcome of such committee is what will determine our next line of action in terms of protest, in terms of boycott, in terms of even withdrawal of services, which are the 3 issues we put online. But I will equally use this opportunity of this meeting to put in our displeasure on the electricity tariff and the tax that is killing the workers now. The tax regime, which is unbearable.
And there you have Mr. Joe Ajero there explaining what has happened. A committee of 5 from both sides. They're going to be coming up with some kind of result in the next 2 weeks. So let's see what happens in the 2 weeks and what negotiations are going to be made when it comes to the increase in this tariff hike in the communication sector and the burden that this is going to put on the Nigerian people. We've heard the conversations from all sides, from labor, from the communication business people. We've also heard from the NCC. We've heard everything that has been said. And to help us understand just the magnitude of this situation and what's going to be happening going forward, we have joining us the former Deputy President of the NLC, joining us via Zoom from Asaba, Asuguni Amechi. It's nice to have you on the program. Good morning.
You're welcome.
It's good to have you on. So talk to us a little bit about these negotiations that the NLC is going to be having for the next 2 weeks. It's not the first time we've had these sort of dynamic when it comes to, something that's going to affect the Nigerian people. The NLC says, no, we're going to do everything that we can to stop it. Then, of course, the negotiations come up. So talk to us about this process, because it seems like a vital part of NLC's process in getting things done.
Yes, I think congratulations, because the process is positive. I want to believe that anytime there is a notice for action, call it protest, call it strike, and the federal government take interest in trying to avert it, it means they are also on the track of solving the problem. And I want us to understand that at every given time, there's a proposal to proceed on a national protest or rally. The expectation of Congress is not actually to distort the economy, but to draw attention of government to prioritize that subject matter, which in this case, federal government has initiated a very smart move did not just call for a meeting, but because part of NLC complaint was that they were not consulted prior to the decision and approval for that 50% increment. And the hike of tariff now is not just going to land on workers, it will spread to ordinary Nigerians. And we're already facing a very strong inflation challenge. So adding to it now will be a very deep quagmire. And
I mean, that actually brings me to my next question. How was it possible that the NCC agreed to something with telcos without involving the NLC? How did that happen?
That is the problem of when you lack proactiveness. Sometimes NCC may take a decision. At the end of the day, it boils down to federal government, because proactively you are supposed to know that there are stakeholders for any given policy or action. It doesn't matter whether it's approved by FEC. Anything that we amount or disburse burden to Nigerians eventually requires stakeholders in those sectors to contribute, give you feedback of the possible consequence of such action, which they did not do. So their consultation was very poor. They were just eager to make profit, but any profit at the detriment of Nigerians, for me, will be resisted collectively, because when you talk of tariff in the area of telecommunication, you are referring to the entire Nigerians who are operators in this regard. And therefore, don't forget, the reasons for increment is to possibly meet up their running costs, which also boils down to absence of government in the area of infrastructure. Because if we have steady power supply, you won't be having masks on the road with independent generators supporting it. So whatever they claim, it comes back to what are we doing infrastructural-wise to make sure that some of these things gain in stability in order to avoid this type of emergency increment.
So let's talk about that particular dynamic, because for many Nigerians who have been following the conversation, like I started saying earlier, we've heard from everyone, NCC, the telcos people, we've heard from regulators, we've heard from labor. But one thought process that seems to cut across, or at least come across, let me put it that way, especially when you go on social media, is look, telcos people are business people. The price of everything went up. It's only natural that their prices will go up as well. In fact, when we had the spokesperson for the NLC here, that was the first question I asked him. I said, look, we were just waiting because it was going to happen anyway, you know. And then he explained to us the issue is not that there's an increase, is that the increase by 50% was too much. Maybe an increase by 5% will be reasonable. But the question also came about, well, if you're protesting business people, are you not in some way discouraging people from coming to do business here? Just to get your response to that thinking process.
Yes, sorry, because of the network was almost cutting off your question. But I want to believe I get you right. The idea of saying that it's expected that the price of it's expected that, yes, tariff will go up. But if you go in that direction, you will be confirming and approving that Nigerian workers especially will be expecting work salary increment. At every given time, there is a hike in price of those things that they provide service for, which includes data. So if you increase data by 50% at the same measure of wage, the Nigerian workers are still struggling to curtail with their day-to-day need, you have done injustice to Nigerian workers and the people of this country, because it means that the food we eat will definitely go up again. And the other measures, everybody transfer burden of cost of production back to the masses. And if consumer become the last bearer of the burden of increment of this nature, it means the entire country is in problem. So I believe that before you make any plan to increase, because they want to do a reasonable increment to sustain, to the best of their knowledge, the platform upon which they operate. Nigerian workers will also tell you the 50%, nobody has budgeted for it this year. And therefore, for it to fly, federal government must also be creating palliative to support workers bear the burden. And that tells you that average Nigeria need the support of federal government to provide a platform. You don't have this kind of proposal anywhere in the other side of the world, where you jack up tariff of communication by 50%. Were you sleeping? How did you get there? Increments should be on gradual basis, following the trend that, do you know that if you do this 50% and certainly economy regularize, they can never do a proposal to reduce price. Everything in this country keep going up. So you cannot say because things have suddenly changed upward, therefore 50% become ideal for tariff of that nature. No, we have to discuss tell us what is affordable by Nigerians and move in that direction. Everybody must actually pay the sacrifice. They can't push all to the masses because we have been bearing all. Masses are bearing the burden on transport. They're bearing the burden on power. They're bearing the burden of high cost of goods in the market. Now you want how to communicate again will become expensive, that people can no longer talk to their relatives, and you make, don't forget, individual Nigerians that operate private business use their self-data to run their business, to individual businesses. Now you want to make it difficult, making prices of individual service more higher. And all of this is transformed to telling us that Nigerian economy is shaking. We should reduce this pressure so that Nigerians don't also rise to speak a different language, because democracy pardon them. And Nigeria federal government should be very wise in this direction. I expect 2 weeks to give us a positive outcome that will be satisfactory.
I mean, one of the things I want to take away from what you said, there's something that people have been talking about, and it's not just about telcos now, even with electricity, even with the removal of fuel subsidy, even with the devaluing of the naira, the concept of gradually doing this and not slamming Nigerians with it and expecting that they will find their level at some point. You know, it does feel in many ways like the Nigerian people are being hit constantly. Just to move a little bit away from telcos, let's talk about electricity. When the hike in electricity happened, we saw this same drive from the NLC. We saw that push. We will not allow this happen. In fact, the concept of banding, putting people in bands, it was a conversation. We didn't quite understand how are you, so you're rating Nigerian, you're rating people based on their income or their neighborhoods. You know, it didn't feel right. And we saw the NLC speak up against it. But today, that hike happened. And we are put in bands. And to make it worse, sir, we're in band A and not getting the amount of electricity that we were promised. So it almost feels like we were played a dummy, so to speak, you know, because when we look at the NLC, we expect them to stand up for the Nigerian people. That is exactly what the NLC does. But when it comes to past situations, we've seen the things that you've been fighting for, we've seen them be done. You didn't want the hike in electricity, you didn't want the banding, but it was still done. So talk to us a little bit about the effectiveness of the NLC. I know there have been some wins, but there have been some losses. So talk to us about that and how we should stand by the NLC as they're trying to fight for us in this particular matter.
You know, NLC at that level is not just a group of people that are regulated by emotion. And therefore, certain things that is done to actually regularize this economy, you may not understand the pressure and the amount of procedure that is required to achieve a balanced agreement. Now, I tell you, before now, NLC was against privatization. But Nigerians at a point believe that privatizing electricity would actually give effective. Unfortunately, Nigerians did not get band A, band B, and all the rest. It is proving that the idea of government trying a division, separating groups of who gets what, for me it's criminal. It's criminal to date, and that struggle has not ended. Any giant or calm does not mean an end to struggle. It's not. So I believe that they will do everything necessary to engage, because till today the definition of band A, B, and C is not democratic. It's not proportional. You can't tell me that because I earn more income, the ratio for be higher. I will only pay higher because I will use more. Not that to determine my tariff, you use a different unit per second against the one you say is paying higher. No, it is true that you will tell us that band A will have more power. Therefore, the more I consume, the more I pay. Just like you have telecommunication. The increment we are talking about is not that the rich will pay higher, is that the rich will make more calls and pay more money. but the rate per minute is equal. That is what is missing also in this band A stuff. That somebody somewhere will recharge with 50,000, it lasts for 2-3 months. Another person recharge for 50,000, use it for 3 days. It's abnormal. Because if I use power, I should pay for the power, no doubt. But making my own rate to be higher because you are giving me more life is criminal. Very exploitation. And that.
Well, Mr. Sugune, one of the interesting conversations that we have had over time is, you know, the role of government in all of this, and it's something that everyone has been talking about for a while. For instance, I mean, we're talking about electricity tariff hike now. One of the things that I think it was the president of the NLC, Mr. Ajero, who made this comment about the telecoms tariff hike, says after extensive discussions, the NLC in session totally rejects the 50% telecom tariff hike, which it considers too harsh for citizens. It therefore strongly condemns the NCC's decision to approve the increase. Right quickly, at the behest of that one is also what the Minister of Information and National Orientation says, that there is already a study that was conducted by the NCC that led them to arrive at this 50% increase, and that now there is some conversation between the NLC, the NCC, and a number of other parastatals, other stakeholders. What are the things that you think need to be considered? This is what the minister said. Now, what are the things that you believe need to be considered in this conversation? Because when Labour is saying it is the largest body in Africa and consequently whatever needs to be said, you know, has to concern it. But then there is also the private sector, who are quite a significant bunch in this entire Labour conversation. So I'm just wondering, how significantly do you think this study will affect the position of the NLC?
Sorry, because I didn't get it properly because of
Can you
the
hear me
network,
now?
but
Can you hear me very well now? Can you hear me very well now? Mr. Suguni, can you hear me very well? Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure that we're going to get him back. Maybe we need to end the call and, you know, so that he joins back. Because at the end of the day, Kayla, the decision, the issue is not whether or not there will be increase. I don't think that's what Labour is saying. The question is how much, you know, should the increase be? Now, there's also, I mean, he also talked about electricity hike, electricity tariff hike. One of the president's aides, you know, also spoke to that earlier and said that as at today, the federal government spends 200 billion naira, more than 200 billion naira per month on electricity subsidies. But much of this support benefits the wealthiest 25% of Nigerians rather than those who truly need assistance. I'm wondering what anyone would make of this, and we're hoping that Mr. Sugone will join as well to even speak to that, because there are people in the NLC who work in these sectors, and they should be able to give us alternative information. I call it alternative facts. Mr. Sugune, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mr. Sugune?
I can hear you. Okay. If I can be heard.
So I can hear you now. So the Labour president, the president of the NLC, had said at some point that the NLC rejects the 50% telecom tariff hike and it considers it too harsh. But at the behest of that is also the comment of the Minister of Information and National Orientation that study is being looked at now by the NLC along with other stakeholders. I understand there's a 5-man committee of sorts that's come up to that. How significantly do you think that decision, that study, will affect the position of the NLC?
Yes, I think when we talk of holistic study we must consider the consumers who actually represent the entire population of Nigeria. And therefore, because NLC is involved, it becomes more sensitive that the outcome of the committee findings and the recommendation definitely will represent what will be acceptable by all. Yes, there will be need for increment because everybody can see the economy has not remained stable. But the question is, the proposed 50% cannot also be realizable. It's not something that is not tenable. So I don't want to predict the outcome of that committee, but I know it will change both positions. To change both the position of government and that of NLC. Something will be done to be called increment in tariff, but must be very moderate in such a way that the income of Nigerian workers can carry it without pressure.
So are you saying, because it sounds like, and anyone can argue this, that the NLC does not have confidence either in the government or in the private sector practitioners that particularly with their decisions, the study they did that led to this decision? No confidence, no trust?
No, it has been so. How would you trust somebody that can take decision without consulting you? So NLC believe that government always take Nigerians unaware. When they now launch the attack, approach of this nature, they now begin to do fire brigade. And that is why we are not comfortable, because this committee ought to be the beginning of the process. Let it be that NCC have notified the public of the need for tariff increment, and the committee is put in place to guide NCC not to consider anything higher than certain ratio in order not to further shake the economy.
There's also that,
to do so.
Yeah, but there is also that argument, Mr. Sogone, that it's a business. The president of the National Association of Telecom Subscribers also spoke with us at some point, and he has even spoken with us this morning as well. And the position that they had, look, we need to be sensitive to the fact that this is a business, that the telecom subscribers, the operators, the telcos, they are a business, and consequently they would have some reasons for that would necessitate them increasing these tariffs, both in the telecom sector and in the electricity sector, because they need to be productive, they need to be profitable for them to be able to remain in business, serving the people the way we expect. Okay. Well, we will. It's a conversation starter of sorts, and I'm believing that it is something that we should be able to take on right this very moment. So we have it with us in the studio now, who has just joined us to have a further conversation on this, Mr. Dr. Monday Ashibogu, who is a former editor of Energy Watch. He joins us right here in the studio. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, let's start out with you on this conversation about the electricity tariff hike, particularly because there are those who would prioritize the fact that it affects small businesses. So speak to us from that angle, the position of government, particularly the spokesperson, not the special advisor to the president on energy, Olu Beherijan, who says that the federal government spends about 200 billion, more than 200 billion naira, she says, per month on electricity subsidies, but much of that support benefits the wealthiest 25% of Nigerians rather than those who truly need the assistance.
I don't think her information is accurate. Anyway, though they just came out to make some clarifications this morning, saying that she was being quoted out of context, which for me, I think the information she brought out at that time, it was quite irresponsible to have done so, given you should have considered the sensitivity of Nigerians with all the bills being thrown at them. So for me, I think they were just testing the waters to see how Nigerians would absorb any form of shocks again. You've increased tariffs, you've created about 4 bands and these bans are location-based. They're not looking at the merits of who is consuming and for what purposes. Largely, the government has just developed a behavior recently that gives us worry.
I think...
And that energy part of it is one of the things that gives us worry, where you take a decision as if you live outside of Nigeria.
Let's be clear, yes. Dr. Ashibogu. So it's not like we are also just speaking to the public. You're a yes. Policy analyst as well.
Yes.
So you may have to alternate the caps, so to speak. On the one hand, the energy sector is largely private sector driven. The telcos, beg your pardon, the discos, they are largely private sector driven, and consequently, expectedly, would need to be profitable to remain in business.
I don't think so. You should know that the federal government has stakes in all of them, in all companies.
Well, yes.
All discos, right?
Yes.
And they are a regulated environment. They are regulated by NEC, they are regulated by other laws. And even in some cases, some states also have the powers now with the new shared responsibility for energy. So it's not as if we can't just talk about profitability just alone. You see, energy is a national security issue. It's also a social service. It's also a profitable business. These are three components you must take into consideration. And
which one should we tilt to more? You
should tilt to the three. You can't do without any. You must. None works in isolation. That's the truth.
But you know,
none works in isolation, and the truth remains.
You talked about energy,
yes,
and even telcos,
yes,
as national treasures,
of course.
But there are those who have also looked at them as security infrastructure.
They are
good. Now, a good chunk of private sector resources are poured into both sectors.
Definitely, you have to.
Now, you are also a businessman.
Of course.
So if you invest in a thing and you are having infrastructural challenges simply because you can't always be at the places where your infrastructure are located, it will be of necessity for you to do whatever you can to remain in business, to protect that infrastructure, because they serve not only your profit and bottom line, they also serve national security issues.
Well, I think that's the tragedy of not keeping to history. You know, if you know your history, you won't have this disjointed information that we get. That's the tragedy of people not keeping their history. Do we understand the history of how the unbundling of the energy sector started in the first place? What was the commitment of the federal government? Did they keep to it? The private sector are now saddled with that responsibility of taking the responsibility of government on one part and also their own part. They are already exposed to huge amount of debt in terms of dollars, and the exchange rate is not the same at the time they picked up these loans. That is what's happening to the telcos too. Most of us know what happened to Mubadala, why Etisalat had to move out of 9Mobile. At the time they were taking most of their loans, we were celebrating the huge funds they were receiving as at 2014 when the dollar was just 199 naira. Those loans are for between 10 to 15 years. They are going to be paying at 1,700 or 1,900 or thereabouts today. Who will survive that? So let's be factual, because if you are telling a private sector business that, okay, yes, you should invest in a sector that also has the guarantee of government, that has, you know, that is a national security asset. The question is what would be the measures you would take to protect that business? Because it's a social service, it's also a profitable business. You're talking about electricity. You're talking about telecoms. These are services that people shouldn't do without if you want an economy that would thrive. But the truth is, these guys were exposed to facilities. At the time we rejoiced, at the rate where it was okay for them to take such funds. Now they are struggling to pay that fund that they have received. The question is, what they collect as either tariffs or as airtime charges or whatever bills that they give to you, is it going to meet up with the exchange rate for today?
For which reason, perhaps? Okay, tell me what you know about, what you understand, and what impact do you think that study the minister spoke about is of essence to the position of the NLC and every other stakeholder? You know, the minister has spoken about a a study that was conducted by the NCC that led them to arrive at this 50% increase. Now that Labour is also looking at the study, and they will come up with a final resolution for the constitution of government and Labour in about 2 weeks. What are your expectations?
I think there will be a common ground, but the truth will remain that there's nothing you can do about it. They have to increase their prices. In fact, if you observed, some telcos have been shutting down some base stations to remain profitable. So they've been alternating. In fact, what we call load shedding in the electricity sector has been playing out quietly or subtly in recent times.
Don't tell me that.
Don't say I'm not telling you that. I can affirm that I can tell you clearly that most of them have been battling to survive. Some base stations had to go down. They were alternating just to ensure that they remain above the water.
So sometimes some people will have electricity, telco supplies, sometimes they will not get.
So yes, so sometimes you don't get. If you go to certain areas today and you're on a particular network, I won't have to mention names, you won't get network. And it's not because they are not in those places. It's simply because they've considered the number of calls from that place. It's not profitable for them to keep providing that service at the moment. So what they do is that once in a while, they just put out the base station and then you can get network in those places. And some of us are just playing the ostrich. We're not saying the truth. But the thing is, if you really want them to be profitable, to run as a business, you cannot isolate the fact that they won't increase the price. But the question is, at what cost? Right? At what cost? Most of them are wallowing in serious debts as we speak. And the forex risk, most of the items that they have to import to upgrade their network, there is none that is locally produced.
All right. Well, Mr. Suguni, I'm pretty sure that this information is also not lost on you. What should the position of the subscriber be at this time? I remember at some point, the NLC was urging subscribers to reject the 50% telecoms tariff hike. And if you agree with Dr. Ashibogu here, what would you say is the most reasonable tariff hike at this time that will also be profitable to the telcos and also help them avoid shutting down base stations, if you agree with Dr. Ashibogu here?
Yes, I believe that we have to be very calculative in making predictions and even suggesting possible rates that may be most acceptable. I don't want to reference. They have been engaged, and I believe nobody should suggest any figure because it may be detrimental. Every institutions, private sector, as you may call them as operators, they are regulated by government in order to avoid excessive pressure in terms of them pushing for their self-profit. Therefore, this time, Nigeria Communication Commission must play a very superlative role in trying to establish that Nigerian interest first before investor. Yes, they will make profit, but I tell you the profit must be measured reasonably in such that Nigerians can afford it. So if I must predict, I will predict a reasonable hike increase will be acceptable by Nigerians. That is all I will say. And then I wish the committee good luck, believing that they should not consider anything harmful because it will eventually erode their effort. So NLC should be mindful of Nigerian need in this regard.
Dr. Ashibogu, I think Kayla has a question for you. Kayla, go ahead.
Yes, there's something you talked about when it comes to power supply, and you mentioned this load shedding situation. It's a dynamic that I think we think about and then we skirt over it and we let it go. But I want us to be able to talk about it. When they put us in bans, when the electricity sector said, look, we're going to put you in bans, and then we're going to hike the the amount you pay for electricity by so and so percent. We're looking at it and quite worried about it. And then they said, no, don't worry. You'll be getting so and so amount of electricity. And you know, sir, Mr. Ashubogu, the way the Nigerian mind works, as long as I'm getting it, I don't mind paying for it. But then what we now noticed, Mr. Ashubogu, was afterwards, I'm still paying premium electricity, but I'm not getting that electricity. In fact, with the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, at least that's the one I can speak for, even though we've been put into bans and they said they're going to give us so and so hours of electricity, what usually happens is that over time we've seen that almost every week there is a statement from AEDC. Vandals were trying to steal cable in Katankwe. The thing spots there. Something spots in Apo. Something spots in Kuje. Something is always spoiling. Meanwhile, we're still paying premium for electricity, 8,000 naira for 4 units. Can you talk to us a little bit about this dynamic and what we should do as Nigerians about this?
Okay, firstly, let me just respond from the statements you've made. I mind paying for what I'm consuming. Really, I do. I can't imagine paying this 1,000 naira for 4 units. It's disastrous, it's tormenting, it's vicious. And as a business person, I am within that band at the moment. And I'm asking myself at what price I should sell my products to consumers. Because most of them will walk away. They're walking away from what we offer because at the price of 1,000 naira for 4 units, there's a peg to what I can sell for certain consumable products that I am dealing with. So that's one. You are even lucky that you have a disco that is even sending you notification that even vendors made an attempt. I am under Ikeja Electric. At their comfort, if at all they have me into consideration, they may tell me that they may even switch off the light. As I speak, I'm on band A, and I spend about 6 hours on generators daily. My office is in Ogba, and I stand to be corrected. It's daily. As we are speaking, they just brought the light, and the light may possibly just stay 2 hours, and then I will run on the generator for another 4 hours. And that is a place that is promised almost at least 20 hours of electricity on band A. So there are other issues that come up with maybe the infrastructure and all that. But for me, I think that it is just simply notorious to have calculated 4 units for 1,000 naira. And then you expect businesses not to hike up their prices, not to jack up cost. And someone is telling me at this period that government is subsidizing 35% of it, that what at the current tariff of band A, that discos are actually accounting for 65%. And then being insensitive, you are going to tell me again that perhaps you have consideration about hiking it, when if Minister of Power had told us that they've eroded everything that has to do with subsidies as a result of these bands that they created. So I think we should stop these truth by half measures. It's not going to pay us well. It's not going to speak to the truth that we are just trying to be smart by half about this. Electricity is going to be very costly. That's accepted. But I am not willing to say I mind paying for it. Because the truth is, any business person that wants the market to flow easily, to make things work, and consumers to buy at a price that you think is comfortable, will not be able to run a business at 1,000 naira for 4 units, particularly the small businesses.
One of the risks that we understand is we're also facing is that, and I think it's the president of the AFDB, Dr. Adishina, that has spoken to this 1 or 2 times, that it seems the cost of production is more in Nigeria. But maybe I should put it this way. Products are cheaper when imported into the country than when they are produced in country. And consequently, people tend to have a preference for imported goods. There are those who believe that it's the cost of production that makes that to be. And how significant is electricity power in the production process?
For most of them in the real sector, they will tell you it accounts significantly to their production cost. You know, raw materials may come in cheap for you. Then you start talking about machinery. You start talking about the power itself. Some people are opting out of the entire grid system to go for CNG. assuming now that perhaps it may be cheaper than this 1,000 for 4 units for those who are in the manufacturing sector. But the question is, how do you feel having every house dotted with CNG machines all around the streets? Does that also speak to safety? You know, does that also speak to responsibility of a system that should actually protect its industries? There are certain incentives you put in place, and we keep saying that the essence of subsidy is not for certain or few persons to benefit from, but for the system in itself to make citizens comfortable. So if you say, I'm going to subsidize the manufacturing sector by giving them X% in terms of subsidy on power, you are not out of focus, because you are trying to make sure that the prices of their goods and services are competitive with what is being imported. Most countries we know that are importing products into Nigeria, their manufacturing industries, their export processing zones are providing incentives for their businesses to push products to Africa.
But unfortunately, it would seem like it's not every business in Nigeria that is or can be in the export processing zones. Lekki Free Trade is one like
We
that.
are talking about local consumption.
But
if, for example, if I can get a biscuit for 5 naira, why will I want to eat a biscuit for 15 naira that has been imported and it's of the same quality and of the same brand? Why did some of the pharmaceuticals close in Nigeria and opted for import? It's simple. You have a payroll for about 30,000 workers. You are battling power costs. You are battling this and that, and you could just simply produce these tablets in UK, bring them to Nigeria, pay the duty, import duty, and it comes in at the same price or less than the same price that you are spending. You are selling as your retail price in Nigeria.
Okay. If we are to review the policies of government that support both, support all of these issues, because it will seem like there's a cocktail of policies that have to come to play here. Yeah. Right now, we're talking about electricity tariff hike, we're talking about telecom tariff hike, and we're talking about the effect of those on the cost of production. So it looks like it's an entire community of interests that have to be taken into place here.
Definitely.
If you were to review all these and make a proposition, what would be your proposition to government?
I would ask them to have a rethink. You see, I would ask them to have a rethink, because if you look at the entire...
Rethink in what?
Good. You see, the telcos have their own challenges right now as we speak in terms of forex risk, right? And we could peg rates for Hajj, but we can't peg rates for a telco. Yes, we pegged rates for Hajj. We pegged rates for Christian pilgrims. For people to go on pilgrimage, they had a pegged rate in this country. But nobody was willing to peg any rate for a telco that was providing services to over 100 or 200 million Nigerians. So if you could peg a rate for them, that they could get this forex at a particular rate, then they will stay at a particular tariff. So we shouldn't play you could do this. These policies are not rocket science. Countries are doing it all over the world. But countries are doing it.
But then there's also the argument of the effect of those pegged rates on the economy.
What was the effect on Hajj? What was the effect on the Christian pilgrimage that we doled out billions of dollars for people just to go and see some sites?
What's Hajj and Christian pilgrimage got to do with the economy?
Well, that's another question you should ask. If it has nothing to do with the economy, why were you willing to give a particular rate to such persons or groups of persons who were going on a pilgrimage that would have no economic value, end quote, but a religious value, some maybe personal value to the Nigerians that will go on that trip? You could peg a rate for them, right? That if you were going to do that for 200 million Nigerians, that the telcos need to remain afloat, provide services at a cost that will make also cost. Listen, once you increase tariff on calls and data, you increase tariff on electricity. The man who is selling just biscuits, or the woman frying akara would also increase her price.
Okay. Well, we have to thank you very much because I know that it's a conversation that we're not just going to suddenly end like that. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Dr. Monday Ashibago is CEO of Bill's Box. He's a former editor, Energy Watch, former spokesman of NASME. He's also a policy analyst, as well as Mr. Mechi Asogoni, who is a former deputy president of the NLC, who joined us virtually. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time with us today. Now let's talk some business. Business Morning on Sunrise Daily.
Thanks, Arya. Well, welcome. It's another trading day. I will see the month of February now. The trading day is moving on quite well at this point. We start with the Naira now. We're seeing from a bullish trade for January. We're seeing the Naira kicking off February with bullish sentiment there with NAFEX. That was up 0.13% to close 1,495 Naira 60 kobo to the dollar. We also had the Central Bank of Nigeria extending the temporary access granted to BDC operators for purchasing foreign exchange from the Nigerian foreign exchange market. That's been extended till May 30th, 2025. So BDC still have access to that $25,000 weekly sale. Let's get a check on what's playing out with oil now. Oil prices retreated today after U.S. President Donald Trump agreed to hold off imposing steep tariffs on Mexico and Canada. That's the two biggest foreign oil suppliers to the United States. That's for a month. And we see the oil market already reacting to that $75.55 a barrel. That's 0.5% down for Brent crude. US WTI, $72.41 a barrel, down a big 1%. Both Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said they had agreed to bolster border enforcement efforts in response to Trump's demand to crack down on immigration and drug smuggling. That would pause for 30 days, 25% tariffs with a 10% tariff on energy imports from Canada that were due to take effect. That was supposed to be today. And back in Nigeria, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission says it will no longer approve export permits for crude oil cargoes meant for domestic refineries. The regulator, who made this known in a statement, insists all companies must meet their domestic supply obligations before selling crude abroad. The NUPRC chief executive, Mr. Gbenga Komolafe, warns that any changes to cargoes designated for local refining must first be approved. He says both oil producers and refiners must comply with the rules to avoid disruptions in Nigeria's energy supply. Citing the Petroleum Industry Act, Mr. Komolafe says the commission has put strict measures in place to enforce compliance. He warns that crude meant for local refining must not be diverted, and the violations will be met with regulatory action. The Nigerian Communications Commission reports that internet subscribers in the country, that dropped by 24.5 million, about 15%, from 163.83 million in December 2023 to 139.28 million subscribers in December 2024. The mobile sector accounted for the bulk of this drop with 138.77 million subscribers, while fixed wired and VoIP subscribers made up the remainder. The NCC also reported growth in broadband penetration, which increased from 43.16% in November 2024 to 44.43% in December. Also, data usage surged up to 973,000 terabytes, an increase of over 260,000 terabytes from December 2023, with 4G and 5G accounting for significant portions of the data consumption. So we're seeing data consumption actually rising there. All right, so on first conversation now, we'll see for the commodities markets, we have Dumebi Oluwole, she's senior economist, financial derivatives company, joining me right here in the studio. Great to have you, Dumebi.
Thank you so much, Laddie.
And happy new month.
Happy new month.
It's a month of red. And we've seen that play out in some, markets so far.
Yeah.
Well, right now it's all about the trade wars.
I mean,
yes, it's been, and now we're seeing China, looking to retaliate on the U.S. And I'm wondering how all of this impacts an import-dependent country like Nigeria.
I mean, the first thing to look at is the countries that are engaging in this activity or the trade war in itself, and how those countries have trade relationships with Nigeria, and then what that generically would mean for Nigeria's imports or exports or the general domestic economy in this sense, and especially looking at how all of these interplays with the global commodities market that Nigeria is very vulnerable to. I think the first thing we would definitely be looking at in terms of the commodities market and would be oil. We've seen how oil prices have moved or danced to the tune of all of this announcements, the trade wars, and the trade exchanges, the tariff impositions and all of that. So if you even start from the beginning of the year where we had the Biden administration, slap on additional sanctions on Russia, we saw oil prices react to that and oil prices increase, because what that meant was there was going to be slower production or slower oil supply. And then you also look at what is happening now with the U.S. actually planning to ramp up production while increasing or imposing tariffs on Canada and Mexico. But then the important thing to see here is where oil prices eventually land at, or where oil prices have been landing, and what that means for Nigeria's budget. We're planning, our 2025 budget is hinged on $75 per barrel, right? We've seen oil prices actually trade at around that, 75, 76, 77. So what that means is that even if oil prices are higher, with oil prices higher now, we should see, government revenue, at least in the short term, we should see government revenue somewhat increase towards this level, at least in tandem with the increase in global oil prices. And if oil prices fall, because of everything that is currently going on, what we should definitely expect over time is that we'll definitely see a negative impact on government revenue. But the other aspect of it is when you now look at the exchange rate situation, where the naira is significantly depreciated right now, and when you convert the dollar earnings to naira, in naira terms, we also should be earning more. And a very good pointer to this particular dynamic is the FAC disbursements that we've seen all through 2024, where with the naira devaluation, the naira revenue, government revenue in naira terms were a lot more higher. And generally, we're seeing the federal government, we're also seeing the central bank actually move towards spending more in naira to reduce dollar demand. So, and if that is the case, we should see some level of stability with the naira.
Right.
But then again, the flip side of it is oil production. So, and that's where I was going to speak a lot more on, simply because we do know that Nigeria is more sensitive to changes in oil production than prices. And with the current dynamics with OPEC and the US, we do know that OPEC is insistent on actually maintaining its easing of the output cuts by April. We don't know what might happen between now and April, but they're in conversations with the US. And if they do stick with easing those output cuts, what we should expect is Nigeria's oil production should pick up. Simply because now the quota should increase. The quota should increase, right? Because we're doing 1.5 now to our quota. We've hit that quota. The government is budgeting, the government budget for 2025 is anchored on 2.06 million barrels per day. And the NUPRC is actually intended on actually making sure that we hit that mark. So what that means is that on the domestic front, there will be an increase in oil production, because we are seeing government efforts towards that. But if OPEC decides to retain its output cuts, we might see some friction there, because Nigeria might not be able to produce as much as it should to generate as much revenue through exports. But then again, we are seeing OPEC planning to stick to its easing of output cuts, and if that happens, it means that there are positive prospects for Nigeria being able to increase in oil production.
Body language of OPEC Plus, yes, and President Donald Trump. Donald Trump wants oil prices down.
Yes.
OPEC would
wants
like
to
prices,
keep it they're being conservative.
To be constant. But at the end of the day, what Trump is asking for, that could be good for PMS prices, because we did hear from Dangote Refinery saying that they reduce ex-depot prices. Yes. So it all depends on, I guess, lower prices is not totally a bad thing. Yes. For Nigeria. It's not. The thing is, we must make sure that prices don't crash. I don't think the U.S. economy will want prices to crash significantly. We don't want that. Right.
So I think even if prices reduce, like I mentioned earlier, right, prices could go down to as low as $70 per barrel. But again, like I mentioned, Nigeria is more sensitive to production than price. So if we're able to ramp up production at $70 per barrel, we should still be able to make substantial revenue. And remember, when you convert the dollar earnings to naira, it should make more sense for us to be able to spend some more. So the goal right now should be on, or where our lens should be focused on more, is on oil production, because that's where we will generate more revenue. Global oil price dynamics, definitely, if prices fall, they're definitely beneficial for Nigerians when you look at the trickle-down effect to lower petrol prices, especially if we ensure, and all stakeholders do ensure, that the trickle-down effect is a lot faster, in the sense that we see global oil prices rise. We're also seeing maybe Dangote increasing its prices, NNPC also increasing price in tandem. When prices fall, that same response should also be as quick. And we're seeing that happen with Dangote. And so the expectation will be that independent oil marketers, including the NNPC, follow suit as well, so that Nigerians do now really understand the reason why the market is deregulated, and understanding that if prices rise globally, prices would also rise domestically. And if prices fall globally, we should also expect prices to fall domestically.
Maybe at some point we'll see a switch there where prices go up slower.
Exactly.
That would be nice.
The pace of increase. So I think that's one of the reasons why some of these market dynamics are in place. So even when prices rise globally, the expectation is that there will be communication to the general public on prices have risen, this is what we expect to happen, and over the course of XYZ days or XYZ weeks, we should see prices increase in tandem. And if there are any changes, so basically the communication to the general public is extremely important. And what this does on a national level is that it helps to increase the trust between the government and the people. And that is one thing that we have seen over time in terms of socioeconomic dynamics has actually significantly declined. The trust deficit between the Nigerian government and people has significantly declined. And one way to bridge that gap is to ensure proper communication to Nigerians, and making sure that people actually see that what you're saying is the truth and it's exactly what's happening.
Right, because we need a lot of confidence, at this point. And, we see Trump also warning BRICS, that bloc, against replacing, the US dollar. And we recently, Nigeria joined, BRICS as a partner country, recently. So should we be afraid?
I don't think we should be afraid. I think that these are conversations that we'll constantly see right now. The important thing, again, like I said, is for Nigeria to really know its place with everything that is happening. And what exactly is Nigeria's place? Nigeria's trading partners primarily have been China, have been the Netherlands, have also been the UK. So we're also seeing some regional integration beginning to take place, where South Africa is coming up in Nigeria's trading activities. And the goal here is, even if we're trading with the US dollar, and I think I want to say this now in the sense that regardless of whatever currency it is, the goal should be for us to make sure that we're producing enough. Productivity should be the goal. So having conversation, I don't think Nigeria is ripe for these kinds of conversations simply because we're not yet there. We are making our way there by making sure that we ensure that the economies were producing a lot more. We know about the decade of gas that is coming up, trying to ensure that we're participating in the conversations around the transitional fuel, making sure Nigeria is also participating in conversations around renewable energy, making sure Nigeria is having conversations and making sure we're doing things around infrastructure development. But I think that we still have a lot of home cleaning, house cleaning to do. So while this is something to be concerned about, or to really check how this would affect Nigeria, I don't think this is something Nigeria should be worried about.
We shouldn't really care about currency.
Not care, but we shouldn't be worried about it. I think we will definitely see how all of this plays out, because the BRICS conversation has been happening since 2023. In fact, since 2022, since the Russia-Ukraine war started. So I think we will just see more things coming up regarding those conversations.
All right. So we're seeing domestic commodity prices falling. Yeah. We did speak about that towards the end of January. So I guess the trend is continuing.
Yes. So we're still in the we're still having some of the positive impacts from the harvest season going on. But again, some commodities are in their planting season, so we're still seeing some divergent price dynamics for some commodities. Right. But then again, I think the other thing that we're also noticing is we're seeing consumers beginning to acclimatize a lot more with the domestic market price changes. So again, the thing of sachetization, buying in units, we're seeing that a lot more. And we're also seeing retailers actually adopt that. So for instance, if you go to the market, you will see like 100 naira crayfish in a nylon, things like that, because they're trying to make sure that people are able to at least buy what they are selling. So we're seeing a lot more.
Crayfish won't do much for me, though.
I know, but I mean, it's something. Half bread is better than one, I believe. Yeah, I think there's one other thing I wanted to mention about the entire global domestic commodity and how that eventually will play out for Nigeria. One thing to note is with all of this tariff slaps here and there, one of the things that we're likely to see is that global commodity prices will remain high. And the reason why this is the case is because as all of this happens, the chances of the US Fed retaining interest rates at the current levels is very high. What that means is that there will be slower pace of rate cuts. And what that now also means is that the US dollar strength will remain will remain in those markets.
Because when we hear stories about the tariffs and, more tariffs, being slammed, all risk assets, most of them, plummet. Then we see the US dollar strengthening. So we're seeing that inverse relationship.
Global commodity prices will remain more expensive. And with Nigeria importing some of these commodities, we will see that definitely play out in the domestic commodities market.
It seems 2025 is going to be very interesting for investors.
Yes, exactly. I mean, at least for the first half of the year. Until things begin to stabilize, because right now there's still uncertainty around the Russia-Ukraine war. There's uncertainty around stabilization with the Trump administration. We're seeing a lot of things changing very quickly,
very fast,
very fast, and we're also seeing retaliative measures. So, but I think in terms of a short-term outlook for how the global economy will be and how Nigeria could somewhat position itself, we do think that the global commodities market we're going to see price increases. And so the government obviously will need to plan for such. We're also going to see protectionist stance from a lot of countries, especially we're going to see a lot of, especially from like emerging markets, right, like China, Russia, India. We might see all of those things come up again, things we saw at the beginning of 2022. So just so that countries will try to focus more on addressing domestic commodity price changes, trying to hedge against what they would expect or anticipate in the global commodities market. So investor expectations, inflation expectations, exchange expectations will really play a huge role in the global commodity and in the global economy for at least the first quarter of the year or the first half of the year before things begin to
hopefully we don't get too protectionist, at this point. Let's look out for each other.
I mean, one love.
Going for one love, at the end of it. Thank you so much. Dumebi, always great to have your perspective.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome back. Now let's look at Nigeria's construction industry, also as it relates to cost of building materials and home fittings. We've seen price of cement, still elevated. Well, join us to get a sense of, most of the price changes and what to expect in 2025. We have Mr. Victor Chibike, is the MD, Bimadu Group, an online store for building materials. Great to have you on the show. Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so a lot is happening in the construction industry. We've seen contribution to GDP, that's for the third quarter of 2024, that's about 2.9%, from 1.0% rise in the second quarter of 2024. Then we're also seeing those prices, stay elevated from cement, most of the building materials, from iron rods. We've also seen, internal home fittings too. The prices are high. And when I check the prices of most of these properties, for sale, in the markets, they're crazy. How's it looking?
Okay, there are various factors that contribute to this because a huge percentage of our building materials are still imported, right? And that is where my company comes in to actually provide solution to this, we focus on manufacturing most of these products here back home using sustainable materials that we can find in abundance. We are looking at recycling plastics, recycling ions, using rammed earth, and also using our local woods here found in the country. So with that, it will actually help. But aside from that, the current culture of importing most of these materials will continue to affect the price of building materials.
Right, we're still, really big on importing, most of these items. Yeah. What about local production? Are we seeing any improvement, in that so far?
Of course, with the current reality of things, most engineers and architects are embracing locally produced building materials. I'm talking about the locally produced bricks using rammed earth, locally produced furnitures, locally produced doors, especially because companies such as ours, Bimadu Group, we have internationally trained artisans and work people that can give international standard, world-class standard, using our recycled materials, our local woods and our plastics as well.
All right, so, these are still early days, in the year, and, looking at the price of, cement at this time, everybody's in it for business, at this one. We're seeing 9,700, for a 50 kg bag. And, definitely that's impacting, those that are trying to do renovations, at this time. So, talk to me about how, people in your industry are navigating, these prices so that you don't lose, customers. Because at the end of the day, when you get some of these, bills, you're like, I can't afford this.
It's true. One way my industry, specifically my company, is solving this problem is educating home owners, architects, and engineers. Many of them are, a huge percentage of them are already aware of it already. We are educating them to embrace alternative building materials that are being produced using our local materials, and from the samples we have in our showroom, they've been able to attest that, yes, this is, of course, of international standard. Yes, we are looking at the plastic-made bricks, bricks of which plastics are adhesive, right? We are looking at bulletproof doors made from our locally accessible wood, Nigerian wood, right? We are looking at the furnitures that stand the test of time. Yes.
Right. I'm talking about furnitures that stand the test of time. We're seeing, some of, home interior items here, like just basic room doors. The range between 150,000 to 400,000 naira. Entrance security door. You just mentioned bulletproof doors. That's obviously more. 400,000 about 1.5 million. Bed frames going from 400,000 naira and above. Sofas, 800,000 naira and above. So I'm like, are we not going to be sitting in our homes, anymore, looking at these prices? And at the end of the day, it seems at the bottom of all of this is a currency devaluation.
Of course.
We've seen the naira, struggle, in the years past, but we're getting stability, at this point. So that should be helping keep these prices stable. Yeah. That's the US dollar against the naira.
Of course. Yeah, the reality on ground is why most of these products are still considerably high to the general public, common Nigerians, is because a huge percentage of the fittings used to assemble these products are still imported, right? As most of these products can be made using wood, but things like the H-tape is largely imported. The hinges, the screws, they are largely imported, and that's where my company comes in. We are partnering with a lot of international companies to bring in their experts to train our Nigerian artisans here and the workforce here, and also bringing in good machines which we can study and use, and also in the future replicate, and thereby we are hoping to bring the prices of these things down.
Yeah, hoping to bring the prices down, because I spoke to one other player in this industry, and he told me that the prices might even go higher for these doors. And I'm wondering, we're seeing stability with the Naira, but why is it projecting, that these prices might actually, go higher in 2025? Because we would like to see most of these come down.
Yeah, it's true. Yes,
from a government side, what do you think should be we should be doing at this time?
Factors that actually cause the rise is now the dollar is stable. During the time it wasn't, right? And things like mobility, the fuel, right? The fuel cost, and we are looking about other things like during importation, the fees the government, through custom take from importers led to the rise of these things. But what companies such as mine we are doing currently, we are kind of bringing most of this manufacturing of those accessories to be produced here in Nigeria, thereby making it homemade, right? And with that, a lot of the prices will come down. Considering those factors, I believe we're on the right path.
Right, and I'm wondering if everyone in the industry is actually looking at, getting more locally sourced, materials. Because if these prices, if Naira stays quite, even though we're seeing the Naira strengthen at this point, if it stays at these levels, we still consider it, quite weak. So, what kind of conversations are you guys having, in your industry to say, what, these are the issues, we still have to struggle with inflation and all of that. How do we put the customer first? How do we also stop profiteering? Because even though we see stability with the Naira, we see some of these prices, some people will still say, it's old stock. I got it when Naira was 1.7. Profiteering is still a big problem. How are you guys talking about it in your industry?
Okay, now Nigeria is a developing country, and everyone can agree that one of the Nigerian dreams is for everyone to own a home. Nigerians believe God doesn't bless you until you have a house, right? So there's a high demand for this. But what my industry is doing currently is especially when it comes to high demand, right? We have already trained artisans that produce world standard furnitures, and we are trying to use alternative energy to kind of beat costs, moving to solar to produce some of these products, of which the solar, solar is quite expensive, but which the solar machine can actually carry, and then employing the locals. They are quite affordable labor, right? So with that in place, most of this price will definitely come down. And also, in our own part and what we do, and being confirmed by artisans and engineers who have visited our showroom, can attest to the attention to details. And one of the reasons why many Nigerians are running away from locally produced furniture is because they believe that Nigerian artisans don't pay attention to details and quality. But then our business it's a second generation business. We've been in existence for over 32 years. So we have integrity to protect. Like I tell my customers and also my staff that we trade on the currency of integrity. So we have that to protect, thereby with the testimonials from our customers, I can see we're on the right track to deliver world standard furniture at a fraction of the price.
Well, it's quite interesting. We see some of our carpenters here not doing so badly, with, some of their production. Some of them can actually compete with, some of the stuff we import, at this time. But we're hoping for better days so that we can all have, seats in our homes, we can have doors, our homes, and some of these property prices, can come back down to earth. All right, thank you so much for giving us your perspective. Victor Chibike is MD of the Bimadu Group. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so the markets are open right now. We'll give you a summary of what's playing out with most of the markets. We track the local bourse and our international markets. That's at 1 p.m. on Business Incorporated. That's it from me on Business Morning. I hand things over to the Sunrise Daily team.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us. Business can't really thrive well without security. And that is why this next conversation is about Southeast of Nigeria. We spoke about that last year, Southeast security, security in the Southeast region. But we are paying particular attention to the Enugu model. Now, of course, the entire Southeast has been plagued with issues like, some separatist agitations, violent crime, clashes between various sectors, kidnapping, and the rest of it. Of course, this has hindered economic activities significantly, discouraged investment, and displaced many, many communities. Let's have conversations this morning with the Chairman, Enugu State Security Trust Fund, Dr. Ike Chioke. Dr. Ike Chioke joins us here in the studio. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Aya. It's a pleasure.
To a good extent, I'm sure that you know how many people feel about the Southeast and the fact that while the people themselves are very, very industrious, the insecurity in the area kind of discourages the industrious people of the Southeast to industrialize the Southeast region. How does that come across to you?
Well, very true. There's a quote by Robert McNamara that security is development and development is security. And you sort of see the situation we are faced with in the Southeast, where you're dealing with people that are known for industry, known for enterprise, known for resourcefulness. But years of neglect in terms of development has also created a vacuum, so to speak, that the elements of insecurity had seemingly overwhelmed the region, as you saw over the last few years, especially starting in 2021 when IPOB declared the sit-at-home situation. And that sort of continued until recently for Enugu State, when Governor Peter Mbah came in and put a stop to it, and things have settled down. But you still find that the region is still grappling with not just separatist agitation, but other forms of criminality, like, cultism, cybercrime, herder-farmer conflicts, political thuggery, you see that, armed robbery. And of course, the menace of the day that's affecting all of Nigeria, kidnapping. So all of that has combined to create quite a cocktail of insecurity that is dampening investment, not just in the Southeast, but indeed across Nigeria.
Quick one before we go to the Enugu model.
Yes.
When you said neglect, by whom?
Well, I mean, the facts speak for themselves, but I think since after the Civil War, the level of development in the Southeast region has not been on par with the rest of Nigeria, and those facts are there. If you use data like the number of federal parastatals in the region compared to other regions of Nigeria. But that's one aspect of neglect. The other aspect of neglect has been the leadership choices. The choices of governors that we've had over many decades have compounded the situation. So rather than seeking to do the best they can with the resources available and also encourage their people to do more, some have sort of fallen behind and said, oh, it's Abuja's fault, and that's why we're behind. But more recently, I think you can see that Peter Mbah has come in and brought sort of a new momentum in Enugu, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you see the same thing happening in Abia State with Alex Oti. So once the leadership recognizes that no matter how small the funds available are, I can do something with it, I can leverage it, I can get more people to focus and work together, then it doesn't really matter so much what the federal does, so long as it's not one of blocking development.
I was trying hard not to go apolitical, because I mean, when you said neglect and you began to mention political leaders, I'm like, hey, since 1999 we've had senators, we've had members of the House of Reps,
yes,
and we have governors from the Southeast. But let's leave that. Let's talk about the Enugu model.
Let's leave politics aside. Yes.
Let's talk about the Enugu model.
Yes.
Talk to us about, when you say the Enugu model, what are the elements?
Well, Last year, the governor inaugurated the Enugu State Security Trust Fund and made my humble self the chairman. And what we have come up with is a model that is working as a public-private partnership between government and the people and the trust fund. And we are seeking ways to support government in its effort of development. Because like I said at the beginning of this program, development is security. Security is development. Without security, you can't really develop. And so the governor's rolled out really ambitious plans to move the economy of the state from $4.4 billion, which he met, to $30 billion by the time he leaves office, assuming 2 terms. That's a very tall ambition. But already, I can say that what he's achieved in less than 2 years are probably more than what we saw happen in the state in the last 8 years prior to his coming. So the momentum is there. Now, to get everyone focused on development, you then need people to take ownership and go back to the basics of things like civic duty and responsibility, and then focus on the non-kinetic aspects of insecurity. Because people think security is all about, show of force, equip the military, equip the police, and let them go and shoot the hooligans. No, there's a whole lot more we can do in terms of educating our youth about the challenges of insecurity. There's a lot we can do in organizing our vigilante teams. If you decide to put 10 or 20 members in every village, every ward, you need to organize them. You need to make sure they don't take advantage of being vigilantes and become criminals themselves. You need to give them equipment and tools, or make sure that if they get injured in the line of duty, they're taken care of in the hospital, or worse, if they die in the line of duty, that there's someone to take after their family. And those are areas where we can come in as a collective and support government in that effort. Often people think of security from an individual aspect. Oh, I'm secure. So some big man comes into the airport and he's got a Hilux with mobile police guarding his car. But that's fine. But you need to move from individual security to collective security, and maybe people now block a street and put a vigilante at the end of the street to make sure criminals don't come in at night. But imagine a scenario where you have entire community security. They've come together and said, it's not just the street. We want to ensure that this whole neighborhood is secure. And that comes by the combination of a government that is working proactively for the people, and then the people who recognize that it's their civic duty and responsibility to protect the assets, the investment that's coming already on ground.
You took the next question out of my mouth, actually.
I did that? Okay.
Yeah, because on the one hand is the role of the leaders,
yes,
the so-called leaders, the governors, the commissioners, your good self, and the rest of them. On the other side is the people.
Correct.
What role they have, and you've talked about the communities taking ownership. But I'm looking at the map of Enugu State right now, of Nigeria and the Southeast in particular. I'm seeing that Enugu State is bordered by 3 other Southeast states: Anambra, Abia, Ebonyi.
Correct.
Specifically. Now,
and to the north, Kogi.
And no, I'm talking about the Southeast.
Okay. All right.
I'm just keeping it there. So now, if Enugu is secure, as you put it,
yes,
and the communities are taking ownership,
correct,
how are we managing the borders? Because there are those who believe that, okay, my state is secure, other states may not be secure, and the rest of them. But there is no way. If you pour water on one spot, it's not just going to stay there. It's going to spread one way or the other. If it's oil, it's going to, taper one way or the other. So what's the plan? Is there an interstate conversation to ensure that the work that the Enugu State Securities Trust Fund is doing,
yes,
insulates it from without?
Well, it's still early days, but obviously the facts are there that if you look at the incident of criminality over the Christmas season, Enugu was quite peaceful. There was no major incident reported, and all the hotels were full. And the data we are seeing now, though we don't have as crystal clear as data as what we saw for Lagos, is that quite a lot of the elite in the neighboring states, Anambra, Ebonyi, Abia, were actually staying in Enugu and traveling to their hometown for day trips and coming back. So that tells you something. The model in Enugu is working. Now, how can we spread it out? And I think that's a conversation that will happen at the Southeast Governors Forum level. But, you know, there have been different methods that have been attempted. You know, there's been a Bubago, Eastern Security Network, and some of them have turned, you know, sort of logic upside down, because we've then had instances of these so-called networks, you know, causing damage to the communities they're supposed to protect. But if the model of a public-private partnership where the citizens come together, contribute funds, and direct it through the chief security officer of the state, who can see from his vantage point the issues and challenges, then in that way resolving them and actually moving to the point where we are preventing criminality rather than doing a fire brigade approach and going after them. Then it becomes a model and a template that we can actually replicate across the Southeast. But we've just been 1 year. It will be actually 1 year on the 13th of February since we were inaugurated. And we're having a big launch and fundraising event on the 13th in Enugu to further, you know, build on the momentum we have.
Okay. Speaking specifically,
yes,
how did the Enugu state government put an end, if it has indeed ended, to the sit-at-home menace?
That's a very good question. I mean, one is a determined position by the leadership, you know, that first of all, for me to develop, I need to have security. But I can't have security when half of my staff are not coming to work. You know, the sit-at-home syndrome in Enugu was so painful. I actually withdrew a particular investment I was going to do in the state because I couldn't see how it would work. You couldn't work on Mondays, and then on Fridays, the half of the government goes for funeral and events. So you've lost 2 days of the week. So you come in on Tuesday, Wednesday, and maybe Thursday, people are gone. So to reign control, you can't be the governor of the state and you have no control over your civil service. So what Governor Mba did was, first of all, to work with the police and the military and make sure there were policemen at strategic locations all over the state and said everybody is free to move around. And waited to see who would come out to cause problems. Initially, people were skeptical. Initially, it was in the sort of more sensible areas of Enugu, like GRA, more sort of developed areas like GRA and Independence Layout, and gradually began to spread out. People then sort of, you know, sneakily come out. You know, the issues would be if you can't find public transportation, you can't go anywhere. Gradually, the motor parks were opening up. Keke was available, you know, so you could find a bike to take you somewhere. And suddenly, people have sort of forgotten about it. Yet in some remote regions, some remote villages, you may still have that syndrome of sit-at-home where the kids don't go to school until maybe around 12 midday because of the fact that, you know, the impact of government takes a while to sort of get around everywhere. But that determined focus by Governor Mba was really what helped kill that menace, and then got all of us working together once again.
Is that the same model used for the farmer-herder issue? Because that was more in the suburban and rural areas.
The farmer-herder issue was more of information, and that's where the vigilante community becomes prime. You saw there was this really ugly crisis we experienced in December of 2022 in Isuzo. Isuzo is a local government to the north, bordering Kogi State. And at that time, we lost about 50 of our citizens because of farmer-herder crisis. It was quite painful. But now, with vigilantes, I think about 20 in each ward, and having early warning systems built in so they can communicate and say, look, we're having incursions by strange people who are moving in drones. And the state has also built a command and control centers, perhaps regarded as the best in the country. The president was there to see it live on the 4th of January. So with that sort of system, the state is quickly able to deploy drones to actually see what is happening and determine the best form of defense and protect that from happening. So that's what we're seeing. There was even a report a couple of weeks ago when we had incursions from Kogi State they had already kidnapped, arrested a keke with 3 passengers, and they're rushing back to the border, to cross the state line. But the local government chairman was able to actually go and block them, because of the early warning system. And that's really what you have to build. Now, if you can replicate that across this entire state, then even in the urban centers, we know we have situations like right in front of Government House. Opera Square is a very popular square. People come there on Saturdays and on other weekdays to come and work out, and many park their cars. But we had issues of people's cars being, stolen right in front of everyone. But now we have deployed, vigilantes who are just looking like they're working out in the park, but their job is to watch any unusual activity, people trying to, fiddle with the keys of cars and they don't have the right keys to enter. So that's really where you want to get to in terms of security. And those are the things that the citizens can do themselves. Okay. Let me give you a glaring statistics. Nigerian Bureau of Statistics published a report, very damaging, 2.2 trillion naira paid in ransom money between 2023 and middle of 2024 across Nigeria. Did you see that? When we looked at the numbers, the Southeast apparently 85 billion naira. That's a huge amount of money. That's probably more money than all the 5 states have deployed to security. But that tells you already that we are paying for our negligence, which is really why when we are actually putting out the message about people rising up to contribute towards stopping insecurity, they shouldn't see it as, oh, it's government's problem alone. Okay. What have they done with the security vote? They should see that I need to do something because we're actually paying indirectly.
Absolutely. Kayla.
Kayla, I believe you have. A lot of the things that you're saying about the Southeast, and it's very interesting. I was watching you, I think 4 days ago, Mr. Shoke. Can you hear me, sir?
Go ahead, Kayla.
Okay, so I said I was watching you a few days ago where you were talking about collaborations between the Enugu state government and traditional rulers, to handle this insecurity situation in the Southeast. And I want to be able to get you to tell us about that collaboration with traditional rulers and how this can be replicated in other places like Ebonyi, where we are hearing about farmer headsmen clashes, where we are also seeing a lot of these insecurity situations across other states of the Southeast. I've been hearing the Enugu model for almost 15 minutes now. I've been hearing you talk about it. How is that being replicated in other parts of the state? You know what our people say? We didn't help to turn off the fire in our neighbor's house because we love the neighbor. We turned it off so that the fire doesn't come into our own compound as well. So talk to us a bit about that collaboration with traditional rulers and what the Southeast governors are doing to ensure that the insecurity in the whole of the Southeast is brought down to its barest minimum.
Thank you. So last week I held a sensitization meeting with all the royal fathers in the state. I was privileged to have the Commissioner for Chieftaincy Affairs organize a meeting, Honorable Oke Obodo. We had in attendance nearly 200 royal fathers, and the issue at stake was to explain to them that in each of their communities, they are actually the chief security officers. And so this message of the Enugu State Security Trust Fund takes root in their communities, how they can support. And of course, we're asking everyone to make a contribution towards the trust fund, but at the same time, you can contribute in kind, like organizing your communities, like understanding who are the people that actually have been determined to be part of the vigilante groups. Are they people of integrity and character that you trust? Or are we perhaps inviting criminality by making all the bad eggs in the village to be the part of the vigilante? Those are some of the messages we exchanged. And then we also got feedback from the royal fathers in terms of where it hurts the most. What are the challenges they see and what are the areas of development government can do, particularly opening up the roads so that people can get information across to the center once there's a problem. It was a very interactive session, and I have to say that I came away feeling re-energized about what we are building, to have a security structure where the citizens themselves take ownership. And it wasn't just the royal fathers. I also interacted with all the chairmen of all the local governments of the state. So I met with the Algon chairman and his team. I also met with the Speaker of the House of Assembly and all the members of the House, to get the same message across. And last but not the least, I met with all the religious leaders. I met with the EXCO of the Christian CAN, Christian Association of Nigeria, as well as Bishop Onaga himself, the Bishop of the Catholic Diocese in Enugu. So the message continues to resonate to get to all facets of the state, and people to recognize the need that in this new era, where we are fortunate to have a governor that is we all have to keep.
Our time is a little fast spent, and I really have a few things I needed to get you to respond to. When it comes to the Southeast and this stakeholders meeting, trying to meet with traditional rulers, religious leaders, it is one of those steps taken by at least the Enugu state government to ensure that insecurity in the state is brought down to its barest minimum. What we're hearing from other people and other states, like Senator Orji Okalu, for instance, he's proposing that all the roadblocks should be removed, and that the security agents that are sent to handle insecurity in the Southeast should employ intelligence-based methods and remove these roadblocks and putting the army everywhere. I want to get what you think about that proposition by Orji Okalu.
I think that's actually an excellent idea in some respects. The roadblocks themselves are causing problems in multiple ways, aside from the huge cost of logistics that is imposed on the Southeast. The average road, maybe in a 5-kilometer stretch, you have 20 roadblocks. That takes a truck, probably 5 times as long to go just 5 kilometers. There's a cost to logistics, which makes business cost of goods and services more expensive. There's a cost to the road infrastructure itself. Because of the roadblocks, cars are piled up on roads that are not designed to have stationary weights. Roads are designed for movement. But when you park trucks on them and they're dripping oil, the oil actually damages the asphalt, and then all the way the road then crumbles. And people wonder, oh, this road was just built 2 years ago. Why did it crumble? It's actually because of the roadblocks. And the third one is accidents. There's this horrible accident that happened in Ugu Onyama just a week ago in Enugu. And that was caused primarily because of a roadblock. The military apparently had put up a roadblock on a very steep part of the road, and the brake failed. And then it hit other cars parked in front of it, and in no time, the petrol came out and exploded, and people were trapped in their cars. And we've had this sort of incidences happen more and more. Now, if you think about it, with technology today, you can organize a fleet of drones from your command and control center to monitor all the major arteries. Because the most important thing is not the roadblocks. The most important thing is to recognize when an incident is happening. And most incidents, if you can arrest it in 5 to 10 minutes of occurrence, you have more chances of solving that problem. And I think that there are some places perhaps where you need roadblocks, for sure, particularly when you're looking for potential criminals who have already made an escape. But there are other areas where you need technology and intelligence to actually forestall those problems. But in the Southeast, what the senator was actually explaining, you can be on a stretch of a road, you can see where you're going for the next 5 kilometers, and there are actually 10 roadblocks you can see in front of you. That does not make any sense, and that's the fact of it.
There was something you touched on earlier. You touched on the IPOB problem, the ESN situation. And of course, we've seen recent stories where they have been proscribed, reaffirming the proscription of these groups. But the impact it has had on the Southeast, I want to be able to get from you at least how Enugu is handling that situation with IPOB and ESN and all of that. And juxtaposing it with what Soludo said, many people have been asking for the release of Nnamdi Kanu. And Governor Soludo of Anambra State, he said, releasing him rather, is not going to reduce the insecurity in this region. IPOB fired back, of course. I said, no, if you release him, the insecurity will reduce. Talk to us a little bit about the IPOB dynamic in the Southeast and how the Enugu state government was able to handle that, and what should be done, in your view, to, handle the situation in the rest of the Southeast?
I mean, I think the starting point of the IPOB dynamic is leadership, and where prior to the recent crop of governors coming in, we had leaders that perhaps had not really taken their role very seriously. It was easy for that vacuum of lack of direction to be taken in. And you also you have to recognize when you come in as a leader, you have to work extremely hard, because as hard as you're working, there are other competing forces that may pull you back. And if you think about IPOB, some of the challenges we faced as Nigeria, 2016 recession, and as we are coming out of that, we had COVID in 2020, and then suddenly, boom, they announced the sit-at-home crisis in 2021. And if you were not working hard to overcome some of those negative external factors, you could find yourself in that situation.
Honestly.
But in the situation with IPOB, I mean, I think there's enough evidence to show that there's quite an element of criminality involved, which may lead to what Soludo was saying, that even if you release Nnamdi Kanu, it may still continue. Because
I think there is my apologies for butting in. I think the morning tells the day. You're just 1 year in office, you said.
Correct.
Well, Innocent Azil seems to be happy with you.
Okay.
On X says, congratulations to you and your team. Can he let us understand how the command and control covers the rest of the communities of the state capital outside Enugu to overlook areas such as far-flung Augu and Aneri local government communities? I hope there is a website that people can go to, because we're out of time.
Yes, there's a website. People can go to www.essstf.ng.
Okay.
Yep.
Innocent, you and the rest of you, please just go get all the information there. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Dr. Ike Chioke is the chairman of the Enugu State Security Trust Fund. Thank you again for your time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Ayo, for having me.
And that's the show today. Thank you for the privilege of being a part of your morning. I'm Ayo Makinde. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And I'm Kayla Megwa. Have a wonderful day ahead.